Welcome everyone to our first OROS this year. I'm really pleased to see so many RECI members, partners, and other participants, new faces as well. Really looking forward to the lively discussions today about this really important and interesting topic. So you all joined this OROS, and in case you're wondering what this funny name actually means, it means the online RECI open space format. The OROS, they are online workshops jointly organized by our members and our back office, which is Nadine and I. The topic and the objectives of today's event were proposed by our working group on teacher training for quality education. Before I let you know the objectives of today's webinar, I would like to mention that the event is being recorded, and the recordings and presentations and results of the discussions will be shared in our newsletter and our website later this year. So you can always go back also to what came out of today's discussion. And now on today's focus theme. Our working group on teacher training has been developing, refining, testing, further adapting key recommendations on what to pay attention to in teacher training. This work has been going on for 5 years already. Can you believe it? And the goal of today's OROS is, first of all, to present these recommendations as they are at the current stage and to make sure that they are well explained. After that, we want to discuss how these recommendations can be implemented, and who knows, potentially we discover already some necessary adaptations because the world is changing fast. And the aim is really to gather your perspectives, your experience, your ideas and your expertise for updating the recommendations as we go forward. I would now like to introduce the speakers and moderators of our TTQE Working Group. It's Thibaut Lauwerier. He's the convener of the working group. He's also the founder and director of eduCoop, our member organization, and he is a lecturer at the University of Geneva. Then we have Louise Chourian. She's project officer at Swiss Academy for Development, and Andrea Wynistorf, program manager at the Swiss Academy for Development, a member of our working group. And as well, we have today Nadine Bernasconi. You've already met her and heard her. She's the RECI communications manager, and she is co-moderating this event, and she's also managing all the things technical behind the scenes. And she has also been very instrumental for connecting all the dots for today's OROS. I wish us all a lively discussion.
I now have the honor of introducing you to the report, a study on RECI members' engagement with the recommendations on teacher training for quality education, which has been finalized under the lead of Thibaut with the help of myself and other working group members, especially Sibyl and Marion, who should also be here. It was also published last year on the RECI website, but the development of the content, as Beatrice already said, started much earlier. Next. First of all, why RECI cares at all about quality teacher training to even have a working group is that we know that teachers are highly relevant or can even be the determinants of students' learning outcomes. So the aim of having such recommendations was to provide a useful tool for organizations with programs in professional education and further training of teachers within international cooperation, and to provide an orientation for the planning and implementation of educational offers for teachers directly. An initial draft with recommendation has then been developed by that time members of the TTQE Working Group, which are not the same as today, or not all of them, around 5 years ago. These were then presented at the RECI Thematic Day 2019, and all participants, I estimate around 50 to 60, please correct me if I'm wrong, were able to integrate their comments and suggestions. as you see a photo here on the slide with the example of recommendation 2. Based on this, the TTQE Working Group adapted and finalized the recommendations once again. Next. To also give credit, the working group that time consisted of 10-member organization, as shown on this slide from the Thematic Day 2019. Our that time director has been involved, so I still remember when these 10 people once or twice gathered at our office in Biel. That was the normal time how you met the working group. We met at one place, Bern, Biel, Geneva, while today we usually meet most of the time online. So they then discussed the questions, what are the factors that influence the quality of training of teachers, and how can members of RECI strengthen the quality of teacher training in their partner countries? In short, the recommendations were very broadly supported at that time and agreed on, so not something that we 4 or 5 people now quickly did. But as I already said 5 years ago, and as Beatrice already said, we had a pandemic in between, and also further developments, of course, have happened, which is one reason why we really want to take another look at them today, besides the presentation of the already conducted follow-up study. Next. And here they are finally. The members, or the first two, the members of the working group and Thematic Day that time have assessed needs and context adaptation as a first factor that really influences quality of teacher trainings. Therefore, the first recommendation was or is teacher education further training programs are adapted to the individual needs of teachers and learners, as well as to the specific context. ABC are there to give a little bit more detailed suggestions on how you could do that, or how that time RECI members agreed that that should be done. I also would like to say it's nothing, many of you probably already do things like this, so it's nothing highly innovative, but it's still, the idea was to give a framework that we as RECI members agree that should be done to provide quality teacher trainings. Of course, we have small organization, big organization, not everyone can intervene or do everything, but that still gives a framework where we want to align. The second recommendation then was to not do just one big workshop once in a lifetime, but really plan this long term with follow-ups. And I would also say that's something I see myself, how important that is. Next, I can't now go into detail of each recommendation, but some of you maybe have even been integrated in the development and know them already since 5 years. Others will have time to work on them in groups or on a few of them. So the third recommendation was to diversify strategy and teaching methods, also giving really examples on how that could be done under ABCD. Number 4 then is to really include everyone responsible, also giving example on how that should or could be done. Next. For ownership and sustainability. 5 was to start early on with monitoring, measure the impact systematically, integrate that from beginning in your planning. Number 6 is then make teacher trainings really as part of a systemic approach. Number 7 would then be ideally don't stop at your teacher training or in the school, but don't forget to lobby and advocate for several things. Example can also be for better teacher training or salaries or whatever are the problems that you find out when working with schools and teachers. Number 8 is then to provide really materials, tool resources that things can go on after your workshops. And also here we have, it's even a bit shorter on the slide, ideas on how that can be done. Furthermore, finally, there were cross-cutting issues that included gender, education for sustainable development, but I would say no more, not enough after the, yeah, we would probably integrate even more 5 years later. Thank you. Next. And now, of course, in the report, you can read more about the methodology, but here just a brief overview. The aim of the report study was then to find out 1 to 2.5 years after publication of this recommendation, if the recommendations are implemented at all by RECI members, maybe even before they existed or after or not at all, and what are examples of it, of good implementation of these recommendations, what could then help the implementation also of other members. The results are therefore based on a structured qualitative survey via online questionnaire with single and multiple choice, as well as open questions. Responses were received from 11 organizations, working all in international cooperation in the field of education, and almost all of them also directly via teacher training, I think except of one. Almost all also work at primary school level, some additionally on early childhood or secondary level. At this point, it is, I think, very important to note that vocational education and training and lifelong learning have not been included in the survey that time, as the recommendations also that time only specifically focused on basic education. Otherwise, everything would probably certainly have become even broader, but that is already a limitations that we may be able to discuss later, a limitation. Next.
Andrea, I just wanted to interrupt you to say, like, if someone has a question during the presentation, just don't hesitate to ask the question also during and after the presentation.
Yes, of course.
I give you the floor, Andrea.
Yeah, of course, just interrupt. Otherwise, I go on with the very last slide before giving to Thibaut. This slide provides an overview about the direct intervention level of the partners and also on the geographic context. Not that we can draw any comparisons or something from that with 11 organizations, not enough, but still to give you a bit an overview. It shows that almost all organizations work via training for or with the local partners, followed by working directly with schools, and almost 1 out of 2 organizations also includes the government level, works directly also with the government, local government or regional government or national even. The geographical context is also broad and varies. The majority of surveyed organizations are active in Sub-Saharan Africa, followed by Latin America, Asia Pacific, and Europe. Only 1 out of the 11 organizations participating in the survey worked in the MENA region, and 1 said to be working globally. Yeah, and I think, as said, there is more about this, but if there are not questions, one can read it on 2 pages also in the report where you have the link. So I would give now to Thibaut, to hand over to Thibaut, who is the leading person of the study.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Hello to everyone. So I will present the main results of this study. We really want to focus on exchanges today with this OROS, so I won't present all the results of the of this study. So I recommend that you read the report in detail, because there are many examples of how the recommendations have been implemented. You have the link in the PowerPoint, but I know that Nadine already sent you the link to the report. You have also access to the PowerPoint, so you can go through the slides. There are many quotations from the report for some of the recommendations. So feel free to go through the slide while I present the main results. So what we can say is that in general, RECI member organizations generally align with the TTQE recommendations, and more important, they apply the recommendations. So this is something very important to know, that there are 8 recommendations, 8 TTQE recommendations with sub-recommendations. And what we saw with this study is that most of the RECI member organizations who participated to this survey implement the recommendations. For instance, we saw that they take the time to understand the field, which is very important in terms of international cooperation. We know that this is a challenge, often a criticism of international cooperation, to take the time to go to the field, to discuss with the different stakeholders, and to know what are the challenges in terms of teacher training, what's relevant solutions we can find. So it is interesting to know that for the RECI member organizations, this is something important, to take the time to understand the field, and also parallelly to consult with stakeholders at different levels, from ministries of education to the local level, for instance, teachers, teacher trainers, school principals, local administration, and also other NGOs involved in the field. So this is one first result, which is very important in terms of implementation of the TTQE recommendation. We also see that they diversify the training strategies. So they have projects in teacher training, and we see that they diversify training strategies. They use, for instance, workshops as a training strategy, but also other approaches were mentioned, like coaching, mentoring, online learning, particularly after COVID-19, internships, community of practices, self-learning. So there are many strategies in terms of teacher trainings that is also one of the recommendations, well implemented by RECI member organizations. A third recommendation, which is well implemented, it is the coordination with those responsible of teacher training in the field. It is also allowed by the fact that there are local offices in the field, that many RECI member organizations have coordinators in the field in the different countries, so it helps cooperating with the responsibles of the teacher training. We have seen with recommendation 5 that the impact of education and training programs and the individual achievements of participating teachers should be systematically measured. And the results showed that the RECI member organizations use more than one tool to monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of their activities. Once again, this is one recommendation which is well implemented. For instance, to evaluate, monitor the effectiveness of their activities, they use classroom observation, student learning outcomes, teachers competence assessment, focus groups, interviews. So there are many interesting tools to evaluate the effectiveness of their activities. So you can go through the different slides and you you will have many concrete examples of how they implement these recommendations and with quotation. However, some of the recommendations are not so easy to implement, because you have to know that these recommendations are ambitious. There are challenges in the field, so not all the recommendations can be easily implemented. What we saw with this study is that, for instance, advocacy at the national level to improve the quality of teacher training, but quality of education in general is not well widespread. So this is probably one activity that should be improved, the advocacy. We also know that there is a lack of capacity building programs, which is interesting because we saw that the RECI member organization takes the time to understand the field, to consult with stakeholders and so on, but also there is a lack of capacity building programs. So we can ask what will happen when the organizations leave the field in terms of ownership of the program, in terms, so it is an important issue. And also a lack of explicit procedures to accredit training programs. Only 3 organizations have explicit procedures to accredit training program. Once again, this raises the question of the sustainability of the program and its recognition within the training system. So this is also something that should be improved. But once again, the TTQE recommendations are ambitious, and it's normal that we cannot easily implement all their recommendations. But we should be aware of this limitation. Now about the limit. In the next slides, you have some case studies with examples and quotations. So please take the time to read them. You have access to the PowerPoint. I will go now to the limitations of the study. So as Andrea already said, this is a small study that only included 11 respondents out of 23 RECI member organizations at that time. I think now there are more RECI member organizations, so it could be interesting to know about these different maybe organizations. Also, some methodological limitations in terms of research tools, because we did only one questionnaire to the RECI member organizations, and we think that probably additional interviews could be interesting to better understanding how the RECI member organizations implement the TTQE recommendations, the challenges, but also what works well. So probably it could be interesting to have interviews. And also some considerations for the future. As Andrea said, also the TTQE recommendations were developed 5 years ago in 2019. And it was before the COVID-19 pandemic, which was an important moment for international cooperation to implement their activities, specifically teacher training activities. So we know that we need to update the TTQE recommendations. Some are still relevant, but some should be updated. And this is one exchange we will have later in this workshop, is maybe to think about how we could update these recommendations. So I would like to conclude this presentation of the report by thanking all RECI members who have contributed since 2019 to the design, but also to the implementation of this ambitious recommendation. Thank you very much.